All right, thank you one more time. The program's still right here this morning on ITV. Yeah, I told you about the ongoing constitutional review that we're going to be talking about that this morning. Well, as it stands now, Nigeria is going through the constitutional review process, which include the amendment related to fiscal federalism, state policing, and resource control, and the special focus on strengthening the federation and addressing security concerns. We also understand that other key areas include electoral reforms, gender equality, and judicial reforms. The National Assembly aims to conclude the first phase of this amendment by the end of the year 2025. And also, too, we also need to let you know that the first phase of it now, going through various regions of the country, has been concluded. Now, the key areas to be looked at in the Constitution has to do with the fiscal federalism and resource control. That's one. Then we also have the one that has to do with electoral reform, so that's two. Then gender equality and inclusive governance, that's three. Judicial reforms, so that's four. Other areas include constitutional roles for traditional institutions, strengthening institutional accountability, and decongesting the exclusive legislative list, and so many other things that are going to be reviewed. Well, analysts are saying that maybe time may not just be helped, because if you look at the first phase of this administration that has just barely about 2 more years to go, some people are saying that it may not be enough, because a total number of about 200 items are built for review in the Constitution review in the country. All right, so our guest this morning is Ekpomusa Egage, a political analyst and, of course, a public affairs analyst. He's joining us via Zoom this morning from Sweden, right there. Mr. Ekpomusa Egage, nice to have you on the program.
Thank you for having you too.
Okay. All right. Also, we're expecting Mr. Osahan Obaraye. So when he comes, he'll take his seat so that we can also have his own idea what he has to do about the ongoing constitutional review in the country. Now, Mr. Ekpomusa, you are not in the country, certainly Nigerian in diaspora. Now, what is your perception about the ongoing constitutional review?
Well, first of all, I would say that the constitution currently we're running was not actually developed by civilians. It's more of like what the military gave to us when we began the Fourth Republic from 1999. And civilians actually made it a tradition to always more of like amend right from 1999 till date. So it's more of like a ritual we keep doing all the time. And there's been that confidence has not been there to actually more of like brought a new constitution, and then we'll be doing it all along. Every 4 years, we keep running through these rituals all the time, and so it's not a new thing with the 11th National Assembly, I must say.
All right, so what people are saying now, I think there are some persons that believe that more aspects of some aspects of the Constitution are more important than others. Take, for example, the analysts that are of the opinion that right now Nigeria as a country needs to have more state, because to them that seems to be one major talking point, and perhaps that will further guarantee development in the country. What's your take on that?
Actually, when I heard that at the intro, when we were talking about the topic, it sounded laughable, but it's actually a constitutional it's actually a constitutional review. So all ideas are actually welcome, but it doesn't mean all ideas are actually scaled through. Because you see, by the current establishment of the 36 states plus FCT, not many of the states can actually survive without the federal allocation. And so we can say, in other words, they're actually not very, very, very viable. Without the federal allocation from the center, many of these states will not be able to meet their constitutional responsibilities, and they are abused. So when you talk about creating more states, it's laughable, and it's just one of the ideas that we propose, but I can bet and guarantee you it's not going to see the light of the day.
All right, so we'll just quickly take a break now. We'll be right back. Don't forget the program is still this morning on ITV. Please stay tuned.
TMI, every opinion counts.
All right, thank you one more time. The program's still right on your television this morning on ITV, and Mr. Iponsa Igaga is still right there. Now, Mr. Igage, before we continue, let's know your take first and foremost, because for some people, rather than, amending the Constitution, the government rather, stay focused more on good governance, and perhaps that's what Nigerians need. Nigerians are really not concerned about whether the constitution is needs some form of amendments or not. If the government can give good governance, they are good to go.
I think for me, when you talk about good governance, it's actually a priority. But I must say, the current structure of the federation most likely does actually create that efficiency and effectiveness for the state to actually thrive. Because as you said on your intro, I must you have a bulk of the responsibilities on the exclusive list, and then we just have a few on the concurrent list. So it's like I don't know how to describe it. The federation is more like the subnationals are actually not very viable, I must say, in terms of economic realities. When you talk about the economic implications, talking about resource control, revenue sharing, I must say the states in their own way are actually not doing a lot because federal take bulk of the revenue, and most of the states there's no much of this ability to actually create wealth and it's more of like drive on their create that drive on their comparative advantage. So for me, the states are actually not doing well. But one thing you can't take away that you can't ignore the structure, the way the federation is. It's federal on paper and in the law book, but it's more of a unitary system. It's more of a unitary system, and it's actually not helping the state to actually more of like live out their potentials. So for us, good governance, a priority, yes, but we also have to look at the structure because we're actually products of systems. And the current system we're running is actually not, it's not encouraging. It's making it state not to be effective, efficient, and viable. So we also have to look at the structure of our federation.
All right, so talking about the structure of our federation now, and that borders on fiscal federalism and the issue of resource control. Now, the items that are being considered under fiscal federalism and resource control have to do with devolution of powers. That's moving some powers from the federal government to state government. Then there's also an aspect that talks about state policing. That's establishing state police forces to address local security challenges. Then also for resource control, we have granting states greater control over the natural resources with some revenue remitted to the federal government. Then lastly, local government autonomy. You have strengthening the autonomy of local governments, right there. Now, let's take the first one now. The one that has to do with devolution of powers. Though you somehow, try to introduce it now. That's moving some powers from the federal government and handing it over to state government. But what do you think that, because whether we like it or not, we must also begin to look at the character of the managers of this constitution that we're talking about now. We're talking about politicians and all that. So the fear is that when you move powers from the federal government to the state governments, maybe you may see some state governments using power unnecessarily or excessively, at the expense of the federal, at the expense of the nation, at the expense of Nigeria, as it were.
But I think that's not more of like a suggestion or an argument to say we should continue running the federation more of like the way it is. Because if you look at the items on the exclusive list and then you compare them to the items on the concurrent list, you see it's far more on the exclusive list, I must say. And then we need to devolve. There are some things we need to devolve to the state, and from there we take to the residual list, which has to do with the local government. There's too much powers on the exclusive list for things that the states can actually do. So for me, I think it's high time we have not just devolve powers. We also have to devolve power and devolve resources down to the states because you can't develop a country from Abuja because this model you're talking about is more of like it was mirrored from the American system. And I can tell you, if you look at the way the American system works, it's definitely not. It's not really for us. It's not really federal. It's national really do not have a grip on responsibilities and what they have to do like that. It's just more of everybody looking up to the center, looking up to the center. You can't develop a federation. You can't develop a federation like that. So they really have to have their own responsibilities cut out for them and then resources given to them. So if you are succeeding, you know you are succeeding. If you are failing, you know you are failing. You can't they can't there cannot be a kidnapping probably in Borno and you're holding the person who's in Abuja, the president responsible. But with the current structure, that's what it is because all the apparatus of coercion lies with him. The state governor really do not have a say when it comes to security. That's just the truth and the reality. Even though the constitution says they are the chief security officer of the state, but they really do not have that control over the security architecture within their domain.
That seems to be, almost a forgotten issue now. I mean, recently we've seen more state governments trying to form their own security outfit, though they may be quasi security outfit. Take, for example, in Edo State, we have the Edo State Vigilante, Corps, and other states are also, beginning to do that. So, don't you think that is beginning to fill in the gap?
It's just like a short-term solution for now because they've not been able to get the terms of security and stability will not be able to get the state policing on board. So it's just like a short-term gap measure to deal with a problem for the now. Because it's more of like the framers of the constitution kind of design in such a way that the president is more of like a civilian dictatorship. And then all these major changes have to flow from the executive, which has to comes in the form of an executive bill. The National Assembly really cannot muster that energy to move as regards the state policing. It has to be more of like a vigor or a vision from the executive. So for now, in terms of the security of like those are of like the outfit you're talking about, they are just stopgap measures for now because what ought to have been done has not been done. So that they don't more of like look as though they are paralyzed. So they just want to do that to kind of deal with the issue. But the main issue is we still have to confront this idea of what do we do as regards the federal policing because it's failing already. We all know that. But the point is the vision and the drive to like, okay, let's get experts around the table and see how to chat away on state policing has not been done. And that vision and drive has to come from the executive, not from the National Assembly.
Considering the kind of people that we are, I mean, as Nigerians, the kind of politicians that we have, and, all that, do you think Nigeria can afford to have a state policing, as it were?
Uh, I think for me, I think we can actually afford to do that. But take note, all around the world, because I always say something that every problem we are facing in our climate has been solved elsewhere. State policing it's not our creation, it's not our idea. It's already been run elsewhere in America, in UK, in other part of the world. So it's not peculiar to us. We're just kind of scared of the idea, but the point is it's already operational. That's one thing I must say, and it's been successful elsewhere. So you're able to deal with your problem square on. You don't have to wait to get command from Abuja before you can move or do anything. So it's more of like it resides with you. You decide on how you want to go about it, your investment in security and all that. So for me, it's not something we should be scared of. It's already been operational elsewhere and it's been successful. So it's just more of we bringing the idea, trying to adapt it to our own peculiarities and get results and deal with security because security is actually very, very, very important.
All right. What would you say about allowing states, individual states, to have control over their natural resources, and maybe a percentage of it now will now be remitted to the federal government? Do you think that may also guarantee some level of national development?
That's a yes, because I think if you look at the evolution of constitutions in the country, right from the colonial era, we've also had whereby we had the regions, and well, people might really not know about this because history is not being taught in school. So the little they get to know about it is more of like when you do government. We've actually had the situation whereby we had the regions, and I would say during the regions, they're actually in charge of their resources and then they have to pay a percentage to the center. And that's what is obtainable in other democracies, I must say, like the United States, whereby the state is actually in charge of their resources. You pay a percentage to the center, and the other parts are used for actually being used by the local government. So it's actually a welcome development. It actually makes the state effective, efficient, and they will have to think outside the box, because this idea of this filibuster democracy, whereby you just go to Abuja, you collect money, you come, you share, probably whatever you raise from your IGRO, you're able to use that. It's really stifling creativity in governance, and it's really stifling creativity in governance, I must say. And for me, I feel that's actually the way to go, because if you look at when you talk about a comparative advantage, it's all about looking at what you have, what are your comparative advantage. You actually leverage upon it, and be able to drive investment, create opportunities, increase your tax base, and that's the way states all around that's the way countries all around the world develop. And when you talk about the United States, that's what it's actually known for. All states cannot grow at the same pace. All states do not have the same comparative advantage. And when you talk about the US, you talk about Washington, you talk about New York, you talk about Texas, they have their peculiarities and their comparative advantage, which they are all driving on. So for us, I think that's the way to go, and we must embrace it. It will actually make those who actually become governors think in a very, very creative manner, and not just come there and sit down and just collect allocation from Abuja and think that's the way to go. It's really not helping us. So in summary, it's the way to go. The states have to have control over their resources, pay a percentage to the center, and with that, I think they can drive development and be more productive.
Okay. All right. So give us an idea, of the local government autonomy that has been talked about. I mean, recently we saw that when this government came on board, the issue of financial autonomy, to local governments became a thing of the past. In other words, there's even a Supreme Court ruling that local governments should be allowed to have financial autonomy and all that. But the problem that we seem to still have with local government administration in Nigeria is the fact that local governments still don't have political autonomy. So, which one would you say should the ongoing constitution review look at? Local government financial autonomy or local government political autonomy? In other words, which one do you think can really guarantee national development in the country?
For you, for me, I think the state, for me, first of all, we have to deal with the bigger issues and stop of like trying to deal with the crumbs of the issues. For me, I think the fact that the states having control over their resources, it will actually be primary, the main point, because on that one we are running the regions based on the formula. It's more of like, since you're in control of your resources, um, whatever you get, you pay a percentage to the center, a percentage goes to the state, and a percentage goes to the local government. So for me, I feel using the formula we actually used during the time of the regions will be the best, because trying to like, okay, deal with the local government autonomy and exclude the state out of it is not, it's not the best way to go. So for me, for my take on it would be, give the state control over their resources, and they were able to agree on how the formula is going to be. A percentage goes to the center, a percentage for the state, and a percentage to local governments for running their affairs. For me, that's the best way to go, not the other way around.
But another breakdown. What you're saying is that you support local government financial autonomy.
I support
That,
local government financial autonomy, but also they have to be that financial autonomy for the state in terms of controlling their resources and everything that belongs to them.
yeah,
Not
but
taking local government financial autonomy and excluding that belongs to the states. So
yeah,
for
but
me, let's go.
yeah. What about local government political autonomy? Because that seems to be more powerful. I mean, a situation whereby state governments influence who become local government chairmen and all that. So if they can do that, obviously the state government will just have the local governments within their whims and caprices. Don't you think so?
Well, the way it currently is now, it's more of like the way it is more of like any state, any party in power in the states naturally dominates when it comes to the local government. That's a given. And in terms of the financial autonomy, which the federal government currently, through the Supreme Court judgment, has given to them, it's a welcome development. It's a welcome development. But I think the bigger picture is autonomy for the state and political and fiscal autonomy for the local government going forward.
All right, so we'll take another break now. Don't forget the program is still this morning on ITV, and our guest this morning is Mr. Ekpomusa Igage, joining us all the way from Sweden, or via Zoom. We are looking at the ongoing constitution review, the 2025 constitution amendment in Nigeria. When we return after this break, we're going to be talking about the issues that bother on reform of electoral system in the country, because it's also part of the ongoing review too. Please stick around.
TMI, every opinion counts.
All right, thank you. One more right there. The program's still on your television this morning on ITV. My name is Evan Sunokugi one more time. And Ekpomusa Igage is our guest this morning on the program. We are looking at the ongoing constitution review in the country, the 2025 constitutional amendment. Well, some of the reactions is that Nigerians are not involved in the ongoing constitutional amendment. But again, the responses are that for the fact that our representatives, the federal representatives all across the federal senatorial district in the country, the federal, federal constituencies in the country are there, the representatives are there, and of course the senators are there in the senatorial district. It shows that Nigerians are involved, because these senators and these federal representatives, were voted by Nigerians. So for people that say that Nigerians are not involved in the amendments, I think they really need to understand what is going on. And the first phase of the amendment has been completed, whereby we saw zonal hearing in zonal geopolitical zones in the country. And one of the discussions that was brought to the front burner was the issue that has to do with traditional institutions, whereby traditional leaders, largely canvass for their role to be recognized and identified in the scheme of things in the country. All right, so we are still trying to itemize the issues that have been, amended in the Constitution, and we've talked about the one that has to do with devolution of powers as it relates to establishing state police and all that, local government autonomy, financial autonomy, political autonomy, and all that. Now, Mr. Igage, let's look at the issue that has to do with electoral reform. And when we talk about electoral reforms, obviously we are looking at these reforms that the amendment is going to be talking about now is going to address some of the gray areas as it relates to the 2023 presidential election, because that seems to be the last election that this reform is going to be looking at. Then, of course, we'll also look at how the electoral reform can strengthen and also guarantee the enforceability of legislative instruments as it relates to further elections in the country. Now, let's go back to the 2023 presidential election. Well, I don't know. Obviously, you guys in the diaspora, you always follow things back home. Now, what are your concerns from that 2023 presidential election? What would you have to say?
My concern, actually voted in that. I actually voted in that election.
Beautiful,
I went from,
beautiful.
before I went to my post graduate studies. And the main concern in that election was more of like the electronic voting actually didn't, transmission of results, I mean to say, didn't work that day for the presidential election. It worked for the House of Reps and House of Representatives, but it didn't work for the presidential when it comes to transmitting the results. And you and I all know that the weakest link when it comes to our elections are more of like the coalitions. So if you really can't, because an election actually won and lost at the polling units. So if you cannot transmit the results from the polling units more of like to the INEC database, and that becomes more of like the concrete result for coalition, I think it's really going to be difficult for us, because if you want to like if you still want to stick with the more like the manual collation, I think there's really going to be an issue there. And that was the weak link, I must say, for Nigeria, for us during the 2023 election generally, at mainly the presidential.
I get all right. So for you, the issue borders more on the transference of result, that it should be more electrical than being manual.
Yes, definitely. That will be more electronic than being a manual because that was really the main issues. Because if you still want to subject the votes of the people to these manual collations, whereby you start seeing results being changed with a biro, you add zero in front and add another figure at the back. I think we're actually not going to do a lot there because when you talk about electronic transfer of results, it's actually not captured in the Electoral Act. So that's one of the weak links. It's actually in the INEC guidelines. So when you go to court, it's actually not something you can enforce because it's not in the Electoral Act. It's in INEC guidelines. And so when you talk about the electoral reforms, for me, I think we can't really do much here because the current government is actually interested in 2027. So it's not gonna stab itself in the foot by making gains on the Electoral Act that will actually impede on its success towards the 2027 elections. And most commentators have said if we really cannot get the core INEC guidelines that has to do with the transmission of results, make it secret and sacrosanct for the polling unit, and that becomes the main point from which you collate. If we can't get that done in the electoral reforms before the 2027 elections, then we are just beating around the bush, and 2027 will just be a done deal for Tinubu to come back.
All right. All right. So I need you to talk more to us now because for some observers and perhaps for some analysts, they are of the opinion that perhaps this electoral reforms is just a ruse. I mean, 2027 election is around the corner. So if we tend to really amend this section of the Constitution, I mean, you are in support of the electronic transference, and that's what a lot of Nigerians are also supporting. Now, we are looking at technology here. And we have another election in just about 2 years' time. Now, do you think Nigeria as it stands now, can we afford to maybe upgrade technologically? I mean, take for example somebody that votes in a community like Down Ogbese, and when he or she votes, the results is transferred to INEC portal. I mean, with all the technological challenges and all that, so are we ripe when we have an election in just 2 years' time? Are we ready for this?
I would say definitely we're actually ready if the executive will actually give the go ahead because in all this you talked about being done with the zonal hearings, then it goes to the state assembly for ratification, and after that it goes to the president for assent. And you're also aware that if the president does not assent to this bill, it does not become a law. Before 2027, it can't be done. People will always tell you that if we don't figure out this dilemma around the coalition, if we still want to rigmarole around this manual coalition where things are being done shadily, we're actually going nowhere. And I can tell you the citizens will not actually be encouraged to come out. Because if you guarantee them that, okay, like putting it in the law books, because as I said earlier, the electronic transmission of result is not in the Electoral Act. Until we're able to get that sorted out, whereby the result on the polling unit becomes the basis for collation, so we can see it on the INEC ROF and collate from there. Then I think if we can't get that done, trust me, most Nigerians are not actually going to come out for the 2027 presidential election because there's actually this voter apathy on their part already. So if we cannot get that through the finishing line, I can give back to you. Nothing much is really going to happen.
So, Mr. Egari, one of the items that is being considered, on the amendments now is the one that has to do with gender sensitivity, inclusive governance. Now, the last we heard of that now was the one that has to do with the 35% affirmative order. And as it stands now in the country, that is not yet a law. It's only a kind of a suggestion, you know. So what is your take on that?
Well, I think in terms of gender inclusivity, I think it's a welcome idea, and women also have to be involved in politics. Pushing for a percentage for them, I really don't know if the political parties are willing to more of like toe that line. Because women in politics is it's still evolving. It's the number that's still growing in Nigeria. But inclusivity, it's a welcome idea, and being passed into law as regards to percentage, I really don't know how that's going to be workable in the Nigerian political terrain precisely. But it's a welcome idea for women in politics. So we have everybody on the table to discuss and developmental ideas and how to move the country forward. It's a welcome idea.
So let us look at the one also still on this gender sensitivity and inclusive governance now. The one that has to do with citizenship reformation, because whether we like it or not, we must also be able to reconscientize or reorganize our minds as citizens in this country. Citizens, reorientation, because as it stands in the country now, there seems to be a large amount of discrimination against the women. I mean, it seems to be that politics in Nigeria, some persons still believe that politics in Nigeria is a no-go area for the women. I mean, it's something that has to do with the men only because of the political dynamics, the dynamics in politics in the country. So what would you have to say in this respect?
Well, but I think it's still trickle down to the political parties, and whoever is holding sway at governor in the state, because I think in Edo State precisely, the last administration actually did a lot as regards more of like women being involved in politics in either in SSAs in different positions. So I think it actually boils down to the party and whoever is also the chief executive officer, more of like the governor of the states. So are they willing to like give appointment to women in various capacity to kind of serve, get the best of the best to actually come work for the states to move the state or probably be it at the federal forward. So it's a leadership thing as an individual and also something the political parties also have to embrace.
The political parties now, but what about the citizens now? What role or which roles do you think the citizens should be playing in this regard? Because like what I said a while ago, that there is a large amount of political discrimination against the women. It is not an opinion, though, but that seems to be what we say in politics in Nigeria. Political discrimination against other women. A lot of Nigerian citizens believe that, hey, politics is not for women, it's for men. So the citizens now, what roles do you think they have to play in this regard?
But for the roles for the citizens, precisely the female gender, I think they generally everyone has to be encouraged to come into politics. It's not just about going to queue up and register to just vote. No, it goes beyond that. You have to join a political party, and you also have to they also have to try to vie for elective position because you can't just leave it all because as I always say, politics actually shapes our life. It determines whether we have a better quality of life or have a probably a low quality of life. So it's more of like it determines a lot in our life because you could just wake up and you hear, oh, the tax has been moved from this particular percentage to this. It's all about politics. So it actually determines a lot in our lives. And I feel it goes beyond just voting. So people have to be encouraged to vote, join political parties, and be encouraged to run for offices. Also for the female gender too, they should come forward and put themselves up for elective offices, and they also be willing to work with the government in probably other appointed positions. And then from there, they can take it up from being more of like an appointment, and then they can translate it based on their performances, and then also go for elective offices from there. So it's more of like it's not just it's not just a sprint. It's more of like it's a marathon, or it's a gradual process, I would say.
So politics in Nigeria and perhaps politics in Africa is expensive. I mean, no wonder people say that politics it belongs to the men folks because of the one-time amount of finance that is expected to be spent and all that. So you see that most times women are disadvantaged in this direction. So if that is the issue, what do you think women should be doing now? What can they do in order to enhance their chances in politics in Nigeria?
For women generally, there are women who have also done well in their private lives, in businesses, in the corporate world. It depends if if those who have done well, who are shining lights in the corporate world, are willing to come into politics, because they actually have a track record. Because it's more of like, this is what I've done before, and I'm asking to give me an opportunity on a bigger role. Like, how would I describe? I wouldn't want to call names, but I'm just saying, they have to be willing. And also, you could crowdfund too, because when you tell people, okay, this is what I've done before, they're willing to trust you with bigger things. And the people are willing to more of like to crowdfund, put little funds together, and they'll be able to support themselves. You can always start from being councillors, from local government to state assembly, be it House of Reps or senatorial. So I think for me, it's more of like that, having that support, saying, okay, this is what I've done before, and asking for a bigger role, and I can do better. And people will, then looking at your track record and what you've done before, are actually willing to support, because politics it's not a profession. It's more of like saying, here's where I'm coming from. I believe with what I've done before, I can do better. Give me the opportunity. And when people see what you've done before and see your track record, trust me, they'll be willing to support you to go for higher offices.
So the program is still on, so we'll take another break now, and when we return on the other side, we're going to be looking at the Constitution amendments as it relates to judicial reforms, so where we'll be looking at items like the constitutional roles for traditional institutions, other items now after the judicial reforms, and also the congesting the exclusive legislative list. These are areas that the amendments seek to fix or seek to really amend as it relates to the Constitution. We'll be right back. Please stay tuned.
TMI, every opinion counts.
All right, so welcome back right there. The program still on your television this morning on ITV. Yeah, we are looking at the ongoing Constitution review in the country. Of course, the ongoing Constitution amendments in the country. Now, let's look at our justice system, and that borders on the, some aspects of the judiciary. Hence, we have the judicial reforms. Now, this has to do with streamlining electoral adjudication and creating pre-election tribunals, setting shorter timelines for election petition determination, and of course empowering judges to conclude parts ahead criminal cases for after elevation. Now, let us look at the aspect that has to do with setting shorter timelines for election petition determination, because that seems to be a major talking point. Now, as it stands now, after every election, there is a timeline that those that didn't win have to react. In other words, they have to seek the tribunals to seek for redress and all that. Then after the judgment is given at the tribunal, it goes to an appeal. From appeal, it goes to the Supreme Court, just like what we had in Edo State recently. Now, do you think that the timeline that is set for at each of this stage, is it too short? Does it need somehow a longer time, or it is too long?
Whether it's too long or it's too short, but I think in terms of resolving this issue, we just have to find a way whereby all these electoral issues have to be resolved the swearing in of before the swearing in of whoever won the election, based on the more of like the judicial system. Because for me, I'm not in support of this whereby you swear in a governor, he starts going to court from the tribunal to the appeal and to Supreme. So I feel we have to find a way which is possible to ensure that they actually exhaust the legal the legal procedure before we actually get someone being sworn in. So for me, I think we can actually find a way around that. Because if you look at the original draft of the Ways reports under the Yaradua government that bettered the first electoral act, it actually suggested for the conclusion of electoral cases before the swearing in of anybody. But in the white paper being presented to the National Assembly as at then, the government of the day or the politicians didn't want to adhere to some things in the original Owens reports. It actually captured conclusion of electoral cases before the swearing in of anybody. So I think what you're actually saying now, or the question you're asking, was actually captured in the original Owens report, conclusion of electoral cases before swearing in of anybody. So they can actually adjust the timelines to deal with these issues. It is doable, I must say.
That Justice Wire's report was faulted on the grounds that if you say that election petitions should be determined before swearing in, it means that you are not taking cognizance of the fact that government is time bound. Take, for example, a governor that comes in that is expected to be in government for 4 years. At the expiration of his 4 years, an election is conducted and a winner is declared. Another government is supposed to take off, and hence the swearing in. So if you say that we have to determine, election petition before another government or governor is sworn in, then it means that we may have some, we may have a lacuna in government. Is that what you're suggesting?
That's not what I'm suggesting. What you're talking about as regards the timeline, exhausting the electoral dispute before swearing in, it's actually being done in other jurisdictions. So it's not a new concept, and we are not the one who started it. Let's even talk about Africa. Let's not go too far. Even in Kenya, they actually resolve electoral dispute even for presidential election before the swearing in of the president to be. So why are we creating this idea that we can't deal with these things? We have to stay with this system which we are currently running, and which is not good enough. So for me, even within Africa, it's already been done, and for us, we can actually make it work. We might actually shorten the process. It may not go up to Supreme Court, but we can actually make it work. It's workable and it's doable. And I do not want to I do not want to believe this status quo where we are is the best. Is the best we can and be quick to other generations to be. Definitely, it's not. It's doable to actually exhaust our electoral dispute before swearing in governor.
Mr. Igage, we're looking at a situation that has to do with election results. I mean, somebody is aggrieved that he's been cheated. He's been cheated for an election. I mean, he comes up with evidences that, look, this is my actual result. I mean, witnesses will be called upon. For Nigeria's justice system that is somehow complex, do you think short time can really address this?
In terms of the timing, probably we might need to push the election a little bit much earlier so you can have time to actually deal with these issues. But to say this system whereby we're running, whereby he's swearing a governor, from there he begins the tribunal, he moves to the appeal, he moves to say this is the best we can offer and also bequeath to subsequent generation, I would say it's not the best because I cite an example of Kenya. In their presidential elections, once there are any disputes, even in Kenya, in Africa, they actually resolve those disputes through the electoral process before they swear in a president. So the question you ask is, how are they doing it in Kenya that is not doable in Nigeria, even for presidential elections? So for us, we have to look at where these problems have been solved and look at how we can adjust our own judicial systems and processes to accommodate resolution of this dispute before swearing in the person. So we are not the first. Even in Africa, even the African climate, countries resolve electoral dispute before swearing in the winner. So let's look at how it's been done in those areas and adjust our systems to that. For us to say, oh, this is the best we can offer based on what we are doing now, not agree with you on that because it's already been done in some African countries, even in Africa.
All right, so other aspect of the constitution that is being looked at is the constitutional roles of traditional institutions. In other words, the question that is being asked now is that what are actually the constitutional roles of traditional institutions, traditional leaders in the country? Because we've seen a situation whereby traditional roles seems to run ultra vires with the roles of government in our societies. Take for example, you hear that a certain traditional ruler has said so. It's more or less like a law, whereas the government of the day may not be in support of such a thing. So what are we looking at in this regard? Traditional leaders, traditional institutions really having constitutional roles. What would you say about that?
I'll say it's a welcome development because somehow it tends to want to clash with the of like the legitimate leader or probably the elected leaders in this in a democratic setting. But in the hierarchy of things, the democratically elected leader is much higher than the traditional rulers or the institutions. So what most people tend to do, they try to work collaboratively with them. And we've seen and you could see the example of what happened in Kano when the governor actually deposed the former emir. Just to show you in terms of hierarchy that the democratically elected leaders are more higher in hierarchy than them. And for us, they giving them a constitutional responsibility. Well, it will be a welcome development, but I think they must also work harmoniously with the the democratically elected governor or government in a state. So for me, a collaboration and having a more of like constitutional responsibility, it's a welcome idea, but they must work in unison with democratically elected governments in the state, and they're not trying to see themselves as being superior because we were actually having some issues like that around the South, whereby people tend to just give respect to some traditional institutions, and sometimes they want to like bite more than what they can chew, and they must also know their place.
So I'm going to be asking you the next question, maybe two questions in one. And the first one is, if you now give these roles to the traditional rulers, don't you think some of them may abuse these roles? One. Then when we talk about the roles, what are actually the roles that we are looking at? Maybe roles that borders on to be land allocators, or what do you think?
As regards to land allocator, those are actually roles designated for the government, and that's why you talk about the Edo GIS and all that you had on that previous administration that we're actually working. So for me, I really cannot cut and place what their roles currently are, although they are there and people just give them the respect they deserve because they really do not have the government apparatus to actually impact or influence positively the life of our citizens. So for me, I feel they shouldn't encroach into roles meant for the government. They should know what their role should be and stick to their roles, even as it is. Even when you talk about their roles, some have actually abused their roles, even when it comes to electioneering campaigns. You see them trying to take sides even though their hands are not visible. Some have actually abused their role, and I must say they must actually stick to their roles and then be neutral and don't get themselves involved in politics because the stools or the roles they hold are not political. So they must actually understand their responsibilities and stick to their roles and give whatever blessings based on our society, give whatever royal blessings, and take no roles in political processes, and let the citizen drive the role, drive, drive the processes, and choose whatever they want to actually lead them. So even as it is currently, I really do not understand their roles because they really cannot actually affect the life of the citizens in a positive way.
Really, is that what you're saying, that traditional rulers cannot affect the lives of citizens in a positive way? Some persons may take, difference to that now because some of these traditional rulers, a lot of, especially in the South here, some of them are seen as they are sent from the heavens, so to say. So they are representatives of God, so to say. So that seems to garner much of respect to them. So I think we may have to be careful with that now. Anyway, away from that now, Mr. Agage, let's talk about institutional accountability in the country because these ongoing amendments also seek to address the issue of lack of institutional accountability in the country. I mean, it is a big problem. Little wonder we have situations that you have certain individuals that have turned themselves to be in institutions themselves. I mean, for the fact that they are governors, they are local government chairmen, they are political leaders, they see themselves as the institution. Rather, they are not accountable to the people. People, don't respect the institutions anymore. They respect these individuals. So, where do you think this ongoing constitution review, this ongoing constitutional amendment should start from in this regard? How will this constitutional amendment address this lack of institutional accountability in our country?
I mean, it flows from the concept of we don't need strong men. We actually need strong institutions. Because it is strong institutions actually that drive democracy, that drive democratic processes. And the clear example would be why would the president be the one appointing the INEC commissioners or the INEC chair and the INEC chair? And ethically, it's wrong. But a leader has to have the moral will to commit class suicide. Say, we have to change this. Because I think even in the original wave report, it was actually another method was proposed on how to elect to actually appoint the INEC commissioners and the INEC chair, not the president actually doing this. Same thing goes for the states at the state level too. So for me, I feel we actually have to build institutions, and people who are actually there must know that you are serving the Nigerian people and not more of like you are there to do the bidding of whoever appointed you. So for us, I feel we must look at how to more of like more of like strengthen institutions, and also work on our mindset to know that we're there to serve the Nigerian people and not to do the bidding of whoever appointed us there. So building institutions is actually very, very key because that is what actually strengthens democracy and strengthens democratic processes. And you look to other advanced democracies and what's actually holding them strong. It's more of like not the individual, but actually the institutions. And you could see a clear example of Donald Trump in his first tenure. It was actually the institutions that was actually able to safeguard the American democracy to a large extent because if it was to be in Africa, most likely he would have had his way and done whatever pleases him. So for us, we are as leaders, both at the federal, the state level, we have to look at strengthening institutions. That's the key thing. And all this idea of everything revolving around the governor, revolving around the president, we have to like, as a leader who's being visionary and thinking beyond 8 years, you have to develop power and then strengthen institutions so that everything does not revolve around the governor, revolve around the president.
All right. So a while ago, you made mention of the exclusive list, and some persons have the opinion that perhaps the exclusive list in the in our country seems to be too loaded. That this exclusive list has to be decongested. In other words, I think that also borders on the devolution of power. So, decongesting the exclusive list in the country now, would that also guarantee some level of, national development in Nigeria?
Yes, that's the way to go. Definitely, most scholars and well, I say senior personalities have actually talked about that because you look at things like what does the federal government have to do with marriage registry? What does the federal government have to do with issuing number plates on your vehicles? What does the federal government? There are so many things the federal government are actually involved in, and It shouldn't be in a truly federal system. So they have to develop those things so that you just have a lean just few items on the exclusive list, and then it's lean, so they can be effective, efficient, and deal with what pertains to them, and then develop powers to the subnationals. But to get that done, it's not really the National Assembly that can run that. It has to come from the executive who's willing to say, okay, we do not like the way the federation is structured. And based on several constitutional conferences, the 2014 confab, you will find things more of like Nigeria from all around have suggested should be devolved more of like to the states, not just devolution, but also you have to devolve powers. You also have to devolve resources. It's actually the way to go, because this idea of the executive list being loaded and they wanted to develop the whole of the country from Abuja, it's really not going to work, because if you're looking at history and how other countries have developed, that's actually not the way to go, I must say. We have to actually develop powers and resources to the subnationals so they can set their priorities and then grow at their own pace.
If we make reference to some of these countries that we may also be imitating in terms of governance, presidential system of government, like for example, a lot of persons quickly talk about the U.S. That U.S. may have federal laws, but again, you have state laws. But oftentimes, we've seen situations whereby those state laws in the U.S. They run contrary. They contradict most times the federal laws. Take for example, this issue that has to do with what Donald Trump is doing in the U.S. now, decongesting the U.S. of illegal immigrants. Some state governors have actually taken Donald Trump to court that, hey, you don't have the right to do this, and all that. But if we do that, if we probably replicate that in our country, maybe let's see now, let's take, for example, the issue of identification. That is in the exclusive list of the federal government. For you to actually be ascertained as a Nigerian, it means that the federal government has to give you an identity to show that you are a Nigerian. So if we now decongest that, take that away from the exclusive list now to now be in the residual list. Take, for example, the state government can now say that you are a Nigerian. Don't you think that may pose problems, as we move on?
I think I would say the example you picked is not, I'm sorry to say, it's really not a classic or appropriate example, like as regards citizenship, because we all know all around the world when it comes to like immigration, citizenship, the airports, customs, they are classic things when it comes to the federal system that belong to the federal governments. But in the Nigerian case, there are so many things on the exclusive list that shouldn't be there, that should actually fall to the concurrent list or the residual list.
Things like what?
Citizenship, immigration are purviews of the federal governments. But in our case, we have so many things. Like I talked about marriage registry. What's the business of the federal government to marriage, or probably issuing of number plates? There's there are so many things, or even agriculture, that they don't have any business on the exclusive list. All those things have to be on the concurrent list. So there are so many things for us that have to be on the concurrent list that should be on the exclusive list. And we know in a classic federal system or in a classic federation, we know the things that should be on the exclusive list.
Let's look at the one that has to do with establishing federal institutions like the Federal University of Science and Technology in some parts of the country, because some persons would say that perhaps Nigeria is not even ripe enough for university education. I mean, a third world nation, a country that is still developing. And that seems to be a major setback to technological advancement in the country. So this ongoing amendment is also making a room, for more federal university of technology in the country, that Nigeria should enhance more on technological education rather than theoretical education that we seem to have that pervades our education in the country. So much university education at the expense of technological education. How will you react to that?
For me, I think education generally it's the way to go. It's how a society develops, and we all have to set our priorities. Because right from time, I've not been it's not been my opinion whereby you keep establishing universities all around. For me, I'm of the opinion whereby you have to strengthen those who are on ground, and just more of like strengthening those that are actually on ground in terms of technology, driving them forward so that they can actually more of like bring out inventions and solutions to more of like solve our problems. So for me, establishing more university for me as in my own thought has never been the way to go, but rather more of like how can we manage what's on ground, invest more in them as regards in terms of technology, so we can see how we can drive the country forward in that area. Because this idea of more of like all importing technology, bringing foreign solutions, it for me, I think it's not the way to go. We have to invest more in ICT, invest in technology, strengthening more of like the universities that are actually existing with fundings, and then we can say, okay, these are your Ivy League universities, and they churn out solutions, they bring solutions to problems in society. So education is more of like how you actually solve your problems. And for us, I think technologically, we have to invest in the existing universities and then be able to scale up a few to that status of being our Ivy League university, being either federal, and then we're able to say, okay, we're actually pumping money for research and development in areas that are more of like problematic in society, so that they can create solutions. Because all around the world, when there are problems in society, either in industry or in government or other areas, they bring those problems to the universities, and then the universities actually solve those problems, and society moves forward in that way. So for us, I think that link between the problems in society and the university is actually not really there. And I think we need to kind of create that strong bond and that link whereby problems of society are actually being solved in university, because that's the way it is elsewhere in other climes. Problems being brought to us, we look at it, and we actually solve them. Because I've done some consultancy projects even for the commune or equivalent of the local government in my city down here. So for us, it's more of like strengthening was on ground, pick some universities that want to upgrade to the Ivy League universities, and the government setting its priorities as regards technology, and then creating the fund for research and development as regards problem in society, and then the university will also do their bidding. So that's the way societies all around the world and countries tend to grow. You have
Yeah,
to set your priorities, create the investment in research and around the research and development.
you seems to be more in support of more universities in the country. Hence,
No. Sorry to say, not more universities. I'm talking about investment in the existing ones,
yes,
scaling up, scaling up,
yeah. You just
not
hold on now. Yeah, that's my
creating more.
question, because you said that problems in the society, that the universities ought to be solving problems in the society, and that's a
Yeah.
good talk, you know. But again, what we are saying is that the Nigerian scenario, because we are looking at Nigeria as a nation.
Yeah.
Nigeria is unique in a certain way. The uniqueness of Nigeria says that Nigeria as it stands now, we probably don't need to rely so much on university education, because university education is so much theoretical. Now, the problems in the society in Nigeria they are practical problems. They are problems that demand practical approach, technological approach. So if we say that, don't you think the federal government needs to invest more on technological education, and maybe education you can get in polytechnics and other centers where you can have technology, rather than investing more on the theoretical education that university education seems to give more?
Okay, that was what I was actually driving at. The investment in more of like the technological side of it, be it in polytechnic where you get the practical skills, more of like so you have the practical, you have the theory being combined together. So it's more of like it's okay, ICT or more of like technology, you put more funds towards those areas. That's what I actually mean. So more of like where you get more of like the technological side of the education. So you have more of like the practical and the theory being combined together. So putting more funds into those areas as regards technology, because when it comes to technology, we are still kind of still far behind. But I think it's with more investment and the goals being written out on what you want to achieve, because throwing funds towards problems without setting your KPI, your key performance index, will not solve the problem. But when you have your key performance index and you put funds towards them as regards technology through the polytechnic system or even creating special like having specialized universities that regards in technology, that would actually take us forward.
TMI, every opinion counts.
All right, now you're welcome back. So as we commence our descent on this talk show this morning, we still have Ikwamusa Igage, a young, dynamic, and of course erudite scholar, giving his insights on the ongoing constitution review amendments in the country. He's joining us all the way from Sweden this morning. Mr. Igage, now the issue of security reformation in the country is one talk that has pervaded political discussions and, of course, public affairs discussions in the country. Now, we're not talking about state police anymore, local government police, federal government police, and all that. Now, let's narrow it down to security agencies in the country, that there should be reformation of security agencies in the country. Now, in Nigeria, we understand that the Police Service Commission is the umbrella body that manages police in the country. And of course, you have the military also being managed by the military formation and all that and all that. So when we talk about security reformation now in the country as it relates to the ongoing constitutional amendment, so where do you think we should start from?
So we're not talking about police, but so we're not talking about more of like state policing, but more talking about the security as a whole. For me, I think we're looking at police. Let's talk about more of internal security, which the police is the primary, which the police is it plays the primary role in. And I'm looking at where we should start from as regards reformation of this as regards some security. For me, I feel the first point of call naturally should be from their remuneration packages. Remuneration while you are in service, and also the remuneration more like in terms of pension after service. So from there, as you all know, the Nigerian police is poorly paid or poorly remunerated. And you could also see the protests they had last week to the first headquarters of retired personnel who are retired, and they are more of like their plea to exit the contributory pension scheme. So for me, I think remuneration will be the first point of call while in service and after service. And you also have to look at technology and equipping the police to get their job done as the second point of call, because there's been this issue of abuse and on their part as regards to the citizens. And the easiest way to curb that is more of like as regards to technology and equipping the police, it's having a body cam on them, having a body cam on their vehicle as regards on the dashboard. So when you're walking, you have a body cam that has a back end or a control tower that sees whatever you're doing in the field. So you can't have a body cam and then you'll be abusing citizens. It's not possible. So for me, I would put a remuneration in service first and after service. Second, I'll put equipping the police using driving technology all the way, because they're actually still being analog in their processes. And I just talked about body cam on the police while they are working, and also digitalizing their systems as regards the processes. When you go to the police station, we should be able to get things done digitally and have a time frame of within 48 hours to treat files on your desk, more of like in electronic format. And also, you also have to have the special lines to call once citizens are in distress or once they're in danger. and then the appropriate response from their end. The response time also has to be short.
Let's look at the issue of education now, because the most of the security agents that we find that are really in the field doing the security jobs, uh, somebody has suggested that perhaps the least employed, security agent in the country has to be a degree holder, maybe a BSc or a HND holder and all that. That perhaps may address some concerns that you raised a while ago. I mean, how some security agents are, alleged abusing citizens and all that. So the area of education, I wanted to also hint on it as it relates to security reformation in the country.
That would more like be more like taking a research on them. Like, okay, if you employ secondary school leavers and you train them, what's the outcome? If you have HNDs or have a BSc graduate, what's the outcome? Do they, in terms of their behavior and response to citizens, does it differ? So I think for me, that's what their HR department would have to figure out going forward. Whether there's a difference in how they respond to issues and in terms of their cognitive abilities, whether they prefer to go with secondary school leavers, well trained, or those from BSc or HND. So I think the HR department will need to sit down and take a decision on that going forward.
All right, so Mr. I'll just give you the opportunity. Your resident, where you stay, I mean, in Sweden, which aspect of their constitution would you want Nigerian government to imitate? I mean, you may just say how, which if they can replicate that aspect of their constitution in our own constitution, even as this amendment is going on.
Um, first of, first of all, what they run in Sweden is a parliamentary system of government, and they have this. It's akin to the presidential system in such a way that there's proper devolution of powers. So where I stay, for example, sometimes I just come out and ask myself, so the commune is who's more of like responsible for everything going on here. The commune is an equivalent of the local government here. So they have their laws, they collect their taxes, they remit what they need to remit to the government. What we actually discussed earlier, fiscal federalism. So here you have a proper devolution of powers, I must say. And the federal actually has a lean list and they deal with what they have to deal with. So devolution of power is the way to go so that they are actually responsible for what's going on in their domain. Even the policing, they are responsible for their policing, to train them, and more of like they're responsible in the sense that they equip them with the technology, even though it's more of like there's a uniformity in what they do around the country, but in terms of managing the policing, it's still more of like the commune who manages the police. For me, what the country can take away still goes back to the what we talked about earlier, um, proper devolution of power in terms of devolution of power and resources, so that the states in our case can actually set their priorities. Because when you come elsewhere and see what our local government or states are doing in other climes, you look back to the example back home, and you just know that it's more of like it's a far cry from what we're actually doing.
All right, so Iqbal, I want to say thank you so much thank you. I mean, all your time that we took this morning. So I want to say that you stay remember, you are an ambassador of Nigeria, even as you stay in Sweden, and ensure that you do the right thing so that at least we'll talk about Nigeria, that Nigeria is a country to be proud of. So are you going to promise me that on this program?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Nigerians are actually doing big things there, doing a lot, doing big things in Sweden, and also very much more law-abiding. And then we're going to keep the flag flying, and we also hope our leaders back home can take a clue from what's going else, probably in other part of the world, and be willing to fly more of like an eagle and not to crawl like a snail.
No, okay. All right, so thank you so much. So we've been talking about the ongoing 2025 Constitution amendments in the country, and we looked at some areas, like I said a while ago, that almost about 20 items that have been drafted to be looked at in the ongoing constitutional review. So the first phase of the exercise has ended some few days ago, whereby zonal hearings were held in the 6 geopolitical zones in the country. And the issue of fiscal federalism is there as it relates to resource control. And the issue of electoral reforms is also there as it relates to the amendment to then gender equality and inclusive governance. The 35% affirmative order, has remained a suggestion. That's the way it has been. So what this aspect of the amendment talks about now is that it shouldn't be a suggestion anymore. It should be backed up by a legislation in our law, so that the women can actually say that, hey, we have a 35% affirmative order in the country. So rather than leaving it as a suggestion as it stands now, it has to be backed by law, so that can actually be aspect of our constitution. Then the issue of judicial reforms also is been there. A lot of persons are calling for shorter time for electoral election offenses cases, shorter time, just like what Tuponsa said, that we can have a situation whereby, you determine the actual winner of the election before somebody has been sworn in. That would have been better. All right, so we'll rest the whole case on constitutional amendments on this program this morning, and we'll take a short pause.